My name's Kerri Goschnick. I work for Agriculture Victoria. I work as a land management officer and I look at a lot of issues to do with erosion problems on rural properties. So today we're here to give you some examples of erosion or questions that people ask, do I have erosion? So today I'm going to take you through some of the points that I've looked at with erosion over the years. The first issues that landowners have is trying to identify whether they have erosion or not. We'll go through some sites today which will give you a gauge to be able to work by and some description on what those sites are like. What is active erosion, what's aesthetic, what's historic, what's risk to your assets, livestock and employees, people, environmental, water quality. So we'll look at those sort of aspects. The critical piece to look at for gully head erosion is the starting point. And this is a good example here. If you've got a little gully head in the paddock that's more than 300 millimetres deep, that's close enough to it, that's the start of your gully head erosion. And from there on it just gets deeper as the erosion process continues upstream. We have here an example of what I would call historic erosion, where the erosion process has already taken place. The sides have already collapsed to the batters where vegetation will grow. And once grass is established in these, they are quite stable and quite safe. So aesthetically, they don't always look pleasant in the landscape, but the bottom line is there is no further erosion in this site here. One of the points that you can observe is the quality of water that runs off a paddock to see how much erosion is, or whether there is erosion in the catchment, is in the water quality. And as you can see in the pools in this one here right now, they're really quite clean, so there's no active erosion in this site here at all. Okay, so here we have another site, gully site, that when you look at it initially you'd say that it would be a historic site where it's quite stable, the batters have grassed up, the vegetation's in the floor, looks quite stable. But when you have a good look at the water that's in there at the moment, it's actually got sediment in it. So it's got some colour in it. So we must have some erosion here somewhere further upstream. So here we are at the top end of the gully. And this is where the active gully head is, where the water comes off the natural grass, drops into a waterfall situation. The turbulence there undercuts this dispersive clay down the bottom, the lighter coloured one, and then that washes off as colour in the water, and then the top collapses in and the next flow removes that as well. The other thing in this side here, this seepage in here and in there, all that there, that's actually subsurface flows underneath. And when you look along the bank, they won't be everywhere on a bank, but they are in certain points. And what they'll do is pipe the material out the same underneath. The surface then collapses, like it has back over here, and then eventually it'll grass up. When the batters get back far enough, it'll become stable. Generally, the active part of the erosion is this top 10 metres. From there, 10 metres downstream, is pretty much the active section, this piece right here. Warning signs on active erosion on gully sides would be collapsing banks, lack of vegetation on the walls because they're too steep to grow vegetation. The walls need to collapse enough, batters be created enough that vegetation will grow on them. Vegetation in the floor is the other one. If you haven't got vegetation in the floor, it will be still a very active gully. Addressing gully erosion can often be expensive and involve a lot of work. So you need to understand what you're looking at and prioritise the response. Gully erosion can impact on farm assets such as dam, as in water quality and spillways, farm tracks, vehicle crossings, utility infrastructure, underground cables, poles, and paddock accessibility by staff and the landowner and or emergency services in the event of fires or injuries. The human impact quite often is that the eroded, narrow but also deep gullies in long grass are difficult to see when crossing paddocks on motorbikes or in a four-wheel drive. And with animals, the most common ones are cows or sheep calving on the edges of gullies. To make the calving process easier, nearly always ends up with the calf or the lamb in the gully which can't get out, so it's stock losses there as well. Quite often with dry cattle, as in steers, with animal activity or play, we've known animals to be knocked into these gullies as part of that, and they end up with either a broken leg or a broken hip or a broken neck, so you lose your animal that way. This is what we see in some places nowadays with a secondary erosion head moving up a gully. So what behind us here, we've got historic erosion that's already taken place. Batters are settled, floor's grassed, been quite stable. Top end will be probably still a little gully head up there. This has been a secondary one moving up from the valley floor. And this is the process it normally does, where it cuts up in the lowest point in the floor, and then this is where sediments from up above have actually got saturated and they slump in. These will probably stay quite stable. In the longer term, the water flow will stay in the middle, but I notice on this one here, that water flow that's there at the moment is actually coming out of groundwater just there. So that's keeping that zone saturated as well. So that doesn't add to the that adds to the problem of the erosion, but it is the process. Fines have already moved out of it. You can see there's a lot of coarse stone still there, but the vegetation down the bottom here has started to come back into the floor, so that'll become historic in the next year or two, and this will be the active piece just here that needs to be addressed. So I hope some of these points that we've shown you today will clarify your decision making to be able to make decisions on priorities for the future.